Motion to approve the minutes as stated.
Second.
Okay. So we'll go to updates, reports, and presentations. Noise ordinance update. Ben.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
I have a lot of information to share this morning, so I'm going to try to move through this pretty quickly. We've done a lot of work to this point in this process that I want to share, and we still have a lot that remains to be done. So I want to kind of give you some insight into what that looks like, and just to reiterate again, this is an update of the noise ordinance. So we're looking at a comprehensive review and really essentially a new ordinance. So eventually what this looks like for the council is you'll have an ordinance that will be dramatically different, most likely, that you'll then have to make a decision on the extent to which you will or will not adopt. And of course, we'll try to identify decision points and hopefully have enough engagement that we know a lot of this is going to work for the community. But I just want to reiterate that this is coming forward as a complete overhaul of the noise ordinance. So it's kind of morphed into a big project, I guess. And what I want to share today is process, background, goals, kind of what we're doing, why we're doing it, community engagement overview. I want this committee to know the steps we've taken to this point. We're not done with community engagement. We've done a lot, but we have some more to do. Then I want to talk about some of the emerging topics. And I think that's important because that'll start to give you kind of a look at what are the points in the community that we don't have total agreement. And there's a number of those. So there's some difficult decision points, perhaps, at the end of this process. So process, background, and goals. You can see the timeline there. DSD was assigned the update of the noise ordinance in February. We spent most of that initial month just compiling data. I'll share some of that data today so you kind of understand you'll see what we saw. We've been working on public engagement since March. We've done a pretty comprehensive, I think, job with that. I'll share some information with you about the community engagement process. I will tell you that we're not done yet. We still have work to do, but we've made good progress to this point. Probably in the summer, we start to look at evaluating and beginning to draft an ordinance. That's kind of putting the technical ordinance together. I think there's additional community engagement that occurs at that point, but that's kind of the timeline. Then if everything stays on track, I'm cautiously optimistic that we can have this to you in September for consideration. That's really aggressive. We may not make that deadline, but that's the goal. And we talked about maybe, say, in October, but we decided to stick with the original schedule. So we planned September back in February, and I think so far we're still on track for that. We're development services, so like numbers, charts, graphs, things like that. We dig that kind of stuff. So you can see we're 43% done with the process at this point. We've just conducted focus meetings last week. We've done engagement in a number of different ways, but we had 6 focus meetings last week, community-type forums. And so we've got a little more to do, but again, we're beginning to move away from engagement into drafting principles or ordinance provisions associated with the noise ordinance. I'm sure that you three know this, but I wanted to share it anyways. The current noise ordinance, and that's an important starting point for the city, the current noise ordinance is based on a reasonableness clause. So you would violate the noise ordinance generally if you're producing noise that is unreasonable to a person of normal sensitivity. That's a very difficult and subjective standard, and that I will say that is the one thing that has universal agreement is that's a difficult ordinance, and that's from every aspect of the community, even to APD we've met with. So I think there's some complexity in the current ordinance. If you're deemed to be unreasonable, then this is currently the enforcement path that you would follow. So APD could issue citations to you based on a violation of the noise ordinance. I'm going to talk about how often they do that. I'm going to give some data on that in a second. The other route is the Noise Ordinance Appeals Board, which is a board that meets appointed by council. It includes some staff members as well. And again, somebody that's filing a complaint on a noise ordinance can present evidence to this board. Usually the person that's generating the noise is there too, and it ends up being a very contentious format, I think. And then after all that difficult decision-making and work, the noise